The best way to think about it is the strategy needs to be dynamic, not static, because talent evolves, talent needs evolve, and organizations evolve. Therefore, as long as you're using data-driven insights to figure out what talent you need, right place, right time, companies will be successful.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter Hai. My guest today is Chandra Dhandapani. Chandra is the Chief Executive Officer of Magnit Global, a tech-enabled services company that provides an integrated workforce management platform. Chandra took on this role roughly a year ago, and prior to it, she spent time at CBRE. She joined that company as Chief Digital and Technology Officer and expanded her responsibilities to eventually become the Chief Executive Officer of the Global Workplace Solutions Unit, a $22 billion division of the company. In 2024, Chandra joined the board of Northern Trust. Chandra, welcome back to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
So good to be with you, Peter. Congratulations on all the numerous podcasts that you have been leading for us.
You're so kind to say that. I'm honored that you are a past guest in a previous role in a previous company. I'm looking forward to this conversation about the latest role at the latest company. And let's begin there if we can, Chandra. Talk to the people who may be a little bit less familiar with it about Magnit's business, the business you lead.
Magnit Global is a leader in contingent workforce management. Now, what does that mean? Many companies, as you know, Peter, rely not just on their employee base, but a fairly sizable contingent workforce. They can hire for additional flexibility, emerging skill sets, or sometimes just to manage fluctuations in demand for certain skills. And many companies outsource that work of identifying, recruiting, onboarding, and managing all the administrative aspects of using contingent workforce to us. So I'm going to teach you a new industry term called MSP. We are a managed services provider. And as MSP, we advise our clients on their contingent workforce strategies, talent availability, pay rates, and we take care of all the workflows involved in hiring and offboarding this talent so that our clients can focus on what they do best, which is their own products and services. We also have a proprietary technology platform that enables the workflows, generates insights, and by the way, we are the only integrated services and technology solutions provider in our industry. So in short, Peter, our clients choose Magnit because they get unparalleled access to global contingent talent, which is right talent at the right price at the right time, market and pay insights, and most importantly, all of this is enabled by our people and the excellent service that they provide.
Excellent. And I wonder, before you joined the company, what did you know about it? And of course, what attracted you to the role?
It's interesting. I had not heard of Magnit before I joined, but there are three things that attracted me to the role. First of all, Magnit's value proposition for clients is actually unique and fantastic. We are not a staffing agency. What that means is we can tap into the best contingent workforce in any market through our wide supplier network. We have a network of about 10,000 plus suppliers and growing. And that's what we say what we mean by unparalleled access. Second, as you know, at CBRE, I led a tech-enabled services business, and Magnit is a tech-enabled services company, the only integrated platform and services company at scale in this industry. And there's a lot you can do when you are providing tech-enabled services, where we can continue to invest and innovate with our both tech offerings and, of course, AI, insights, etc. And finally, many of the client companies that we work with at Magnit are almost the same companies I worked with in a very different role at CBRE when I led the real estate global workplace solutions business there. So a lot of similarities, and it's in the people and procurement space that our clients sit in. And therefore, I was able to also bring some transferable skills as well as contacts to this role.
That makes sense. And in many ways, a logical continuation of your career ascent. One of the things I find fascinating about your current role is the data that you have, the data you keep. And I wonder, especially as it pertains to skills on the rise, skills that are growing in demand, maybe those that are out of demand, the fact that you have a perch that allows you a lens to this that few people have. I wonder if you can share some of what you learned from that and that might be of interest to this audience.
It's a question that we are constantly looking at. We have, first of all, what we believe is the largest contingent labor data set in the world. And we have a 30-year history of that data. As you know, skills are a focal point for us in finding this talent and, of course, for our clients. I was curious, and our teams are always mining this data to identify which roles are in demand, which ones not so much. And I expected to see a rise in AI and machine learning roles, as you can imagine, with all the buzz going on, right? What we found is automation skills, whether it's skills related to automation frameworks, robotic process automation, just automation in general, not AI, but automation roles have outpaced all other forms of roles in the first half of 2025 when we compare to first half of 2024. And what that says is, for example, it increased by almost 12 percentage points, these skill sets in the roles that we have visibility into. And whereas AI machine learning roles increased only by about 2 percentage points. And we think it's because while the promise of AI is very exciting, and we'll talk about that later, in enterprise settings, it's still being adopted slower than you would think. And automation skills are being accelerated to actually fill the ROI gap that companies are looking for. The second interesting skill set is actually talent acquisition and recruitment itself. As you know, voluntary terminations have been at historic lows. Some people refer to it as, I think there's a phrase that's emerged in terms of people staying with their jobs, job hugging or something along those lines. But this year, we've seen an uptick in hires for skills related to talent acquisition and recruitment. So recruiters, for instance, made up just about 3% of all HR fills in 2024, and they've increased to about 5% in 2025, the first half of the year and year to date. And what we're seeing, companies are doing a bit of a wait-and-see approach, but this data point signals that companies are still hiring, and very likely they're looking for niche roles that require stronger sourcing power. And we are optimistic that this could also signal a change in terms of, the job market potentially opening up. But of course, none of us has a crystal ball about that.
Really interesting insights. I actually just double clicking on the first of the two, the automation point. I wonder to what extent, and we'd be interested in testing this hypothesis with you, as automation is oftentimes a precursor for better exposure to and a better ability to take advantage of, for example, artificial intelligence and other data and analytics disciplines, whether maybe it's a self-diagnosis in many organizations that more maturity is necessary there before then hiring and expanding from a data and AI perspective. Does that ring true for you? What do you think of that hypothesis?
Actually, it's a very astute observation. And a lot of people talk about AI. Peter, you're so familiar with the world of technology. In order to have any differentiating capabilities, not the large language models, right? In terms of having real differentiated AI capabilities, what do companies have? They have their own proprietary data, right? And what enables creation of that data? It's the automation of the workflows. So you are absolutely spot on. I think it's a precursor. And by the way, it's really smart of companies that don't have data well organized or processes automated that generates that data to start focusing on that. So I agree with that hypothesis. And in fact, I see that happening within our own company as well as many other companies that I have visibility into.
And now that you are developing a growing expertise, of course, in contingent workforces, how would you advise organizations in weighing the balance between hiring employees versus outsourced talent? What's the right way to think about that balance? Knowing, of course, it's not what's one size fits all for all organizations, but are there some principles that you would advise that you think work across most organizations?
Yeah, actually, you use the right word, Peter. It is balance, right? It's a balancing act. And as you said, there is no one size fits all answer. As you know, I have had the opportunity of being on the other side of being able to acquire this talent, right? On the business side, when I was heading up technology organizations or large businesses at CBRE and previously at Capital One. So I think the right balance between employees and contingent talent depends a lot on a company's business objectives, the pace of change in their industry and within their own company, and how critical certain capabilities are, right, to their long-term strategy. I like to think of this in the context of what are your anchor or core capabilities that define your competitive advantage or require deep institutional knowledge. Typically, companies like to keep that in-house. At the same time, leveraging contingent talent provides scalability when there is a variation in demand, as I mentioned. It also gives you access to specialized skills on demand without having the burden of carrying long-term fixed costs. And also, sometimes labor is in short supply in emerging skills, right? So in that case, and companies are learning, for example, what does it mean to have amazing AI skills? Not all companies have all that figured out yet. Maybe you start with some contingent talent and you learn more about what you need, and then you move to permanent. Finally, I think the way we talk to clients about this is leverage data, leverage insights, because with today's platforms, CIOs and CTOs, they have the visibility, the compliance and analytics using platforms like what Magnit has and other companies do as well, to make fact-based decisions about when to flex, which geographies do you want to flex into, and what to build internally. So it's no longer a blind trade-off. And, I remember very early days, we used to say, oh, let's do a 60-40, right? 60% permanent, 40% contingent. But I think you can be much more data-driven, analytically savvy, and look at it as a strategic lever by using contingent talent. And finally, that balance should support resilience in terms of what you're trying to do within a company. And at the same time, it should drive innovation. So let me stop there. And by the way, to summarize, the best way to think about it is this strategy needs to be dynamic, not static, because talent evolves, talent needs evolve, and organizations evolve. Therefore, as long as you're using data-driven insights to figure out what talent you need, right place, right time, companies will be successful.
Very well articulated, Chandra. Thank you. I wonder, I'd love to understand a bit more about how some of what we're talking about applies to your own organization, and actually more specifically, the extent to which you and your team leverage Magnit's integrated workforce management platform. How do you drink your own champagne, so to say, as part of the ongoing evolution of the company itself?
That's right. I mentioned that we have a very strong services offering. We have people who help our clients with the entire set of workflows, etc. And we also have our own platform internally, right? So we absolutely use our own platform internally, and we'll do even more of that going forward. One example I'll give you is Maggie, our Gen AI companion. Our teams rely on Maggie's knowledge agent to make sure when we work with large corporations, right, they all have their own policies, they have their workflows, guidelines. And how do you make sure that when a client services representative works on particular needs for a client, that they have those policies and workflows easily accessible and know how to operate? So instead of teams trying to spend time figuring out what needs to happen, we enable that through our own platform. And you can get contextual answers to their questions. That means they can move fast in supporting our clients and also be smarter about how they bring the contingent labor to the table, right? And same thing to our clients. So for example, it creates a virtuous cycle where if our services teams use our platform, it generates more data that we can help service our clients better. So it creates a win-win-win, if you will. And we are continuing to invest in our platform. Last thing I would say is where clients opt in, we also leverage our platform and Maggie, which is our Gen AI platform, to help match resumes and job descriptions. Not instead of human reviews, but as a complement to it.
Can you talk a bit about the scale of the business, the size of the team, any sort of metrics that would provide a bit of information about where the business is today and the size it's reached?
Yeah, as you can imagine, Magnit is privately held, so I can't give you a lot of information on the size of the business. I would just say that in terms of the level of client spend that flows through our teams and our platform, it's comparable to the business I had at CBI.
Fascinating. Very interesting. I appreciate that context.
Yeah.
I know from our past conversations that you have a mantra, which is to experiment boldly and implement prudently. And I've always really liked that. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you've thought about that mantra in your current post now as an executive running an entire organization.
I think I absolutely still believe in that. The important thing is you should not be afraid to test. And this is something I learned way back at Capital One. You have to continuously test and learn, but you have to be thoughtful about what you scale. And so I'm a huge believer, and AI is a good example, right? Everyone is talking about AI, and some people are testing certain things with it. Some companies are further ahead. My mantra to our Magnit team is let's experiment boldly with AI, but implement prudently, because you have to be thoughtful about data privacy. You have to be really thoughtful about testing for bias, all of the things that you are very familiar with. That's one example where you can't just rush to do something because everyone's talking about it, but you want to be very well versed in it. You want to experiment boldly and be really smart about when and how you implement new technology.
Yeah, fascinating. Really well articulated. Thank you again, Chandra. I want to ask you a little bit about, I mentioned we got to know each other when you were the Chief Digital and Technology Officer at CBRE. And that role began a remarkable ascent, first within that organization and eventually leading to your current post. I didn't mention that you were a Chief Administrative Officer. You served as a COO of a business before becoming a CEO of a business within CBRE, and now on to Magnit Global as the Group Chief Executive Officer. Reflect, if you would, Chandra, about the pivot from a tech and digital executive role to something beyond that. That's, I think, a lot of people that will be watching or listening to this have the ambition to walk in your footsteps, maybe all the way to the kind of post you have today, but perhaps as intermediate steps or even as final destinations, something more akin to one or two notches above that last role where you ran tech and digital. When did it become apparent to you? When did the fire light in you, depending upon, it was probably a mix of those two things, such that it became apparent that there was something beyond those roles that you might take on?
It's a great question, and I get asked that question a lot, Peter. I would say it started even before CBRE, where at Capital One, I had the opportunity to lead technology roles as well as spend time in on the business side, as well as running operations. And as I reflect on, why is it that I've straddled these roles between technology and business leadership roles? I think it comes from, I've always believed in technology as a means to an end and not just something that you do for its own sake. Technology is an amazing enabler in making all our lives easier. And I use this concept of, we have a lot of technology leaders. When I speak with them, I ask them, are you an inside out CIO or CTO? Are you an outside in? What I mean by that is, when you're a CIO or CTO of an organization, right? The view you have into the horizontal aspects of an organization, the business units they have, the functions, it's just unparalleled. And there's a lot you can do with that in helping the company achieve better innovation, productivity, service their clients better, etc. Right? So, but if you get buried in what you have to get done just within the technology space, it's hard for you to lift your heads up and look at what's next. Where could you take the organization further? So I think I'm wired to keep looking around the corner and see what could we do to use technology as an enabler rather than technology for its own sake. And that, there are a lot of problems in companies or a lot of challenges, more so than there are people to solve them. So I kind of gravitate to figuring out what's the next interesting problem I could solve, and then the rest falls in place. I don't know if that's an oversimplification, but I just feel like, instead of focusing on titles, I've always thought about it as outside in view. What does the company need? What do our clients need? What do our customers need? And how can technology be an enabler in achieving that?
Really nicely said, certainly, Chandra. And you have rightfully mentioned in a few of your answers your past experience at Capital One. One of the things I've always been very impressed with about Capital One is this remarkable diaspora of executives that have emerged from that company, many of them in technology, but beyond technology as well. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to reflect upon what it is about and what it was about your time there as perhaps to some degree emblematic of the career arcs of so many who've done well there and then done very well beyond there as well. What it was about that experience that was so formative for you. You just articulated so nicely about the diversity of roles that you were exposed to, and presumably there's something about the culture that enables that you're not pigeonholed in one place should you have the desire and flexibility to take on a breadth of responsibilities. But other reflections from you as to what made that experience special for you, like so many?
First of all, Peter, I continue to be an admirer of Capital One. And I've learned a lot, being through everything, all the roles I had at Capital One over a 17-year period. So it's very much in my DNA. And I would say it starts with a very rigorous recruiting process that Capital One has had in place since its inception. And what I mean by that is we had to get through, of course, a rigorous set of quantitative tests, but they would always also have these behavioral interviews. And the beauty of that is you not only look for people who can get a job done, but they do it in a way that's collaborative and elevate others around them. So what I learned at Capital One is it's not just the what, but the how. And they both matter. And we maintain that rigor throughout in internal promotions as well. The second thing I would say is the company values. By the way, my knowledge is dated, right? I haven't been at Capital One since 2016, but the company values are excellence and do the right thing. The most important word in that phrase is and. Many companies focus on excellence, and many companies focus on doing the right thing for their customers and their stakeholders. With Capital One, it was a relentless focus on excellence and doing the right thing for your customers and for the employees or associates, as Capital One calls them. And finally, we touched on this earlier, a very intensive and iterative test and learn culture, which enables innovation to thrive. I'll give you two examples, and I have never heard of or seen other companies do this. When I let Capital One know I'm leaving and moving to CBRE, a lot of companies would say, okay, fine. Capital One, the leadership there, they actually wanted me to hold a fireside chat on my last day at Capital One with the entire division here in Plano. And they wanted to just do a fireside chat, the head of the division and the HR leader, on what my takeaways were from Capital One. And I actually closed with excellence and do the right thing. And the second thing is, I was very fortunate to build an innovation center at Capital One called The Garage when I was there. And last year was the 10th anniversary of The Garage. And they actually invited me back to come and speak to their team about the origins of The Garage and what we did there. So I don't think many companies would do that. It was so special to me, and I think Capital One will continue to hold a special place in my heart.
That's very, very nicely said. I wanted to also ask you, Chandra, what other trends, as you look to the future, what other trends are exciting to you that might have application to you, to your company? What comes to mind?
I would love to ask you the same question, but the way I think about it is we're actually living through an amazing period of rapid technological evolution, right? There are many people who came before us who probably felt the same way in their generation. But between the rapid evolution of Gen AI and then everything to do with digital currencies, crypto, including stable coins, and then you have this emergence of quantum computing. Just last week, I was fascinated to see HSBC announce that in partnership with IBM, they were able to combine the power of quantum computing and traditional computing to achieve a 34% improvement, right, in predicting how likely a bond trade would be filled at a specific price. Every one of these, we talk a lot about Gen AI, there's a lot of conversation about cryptocurrency, and quantum computing is very early. Any one of these three trends is by itself very exciting and promising, but imagine a multivariate combination of these three trends as they play out in the course of our lifetime, and the role that each of us could play in that evolution. And that's super exciting for me, and I think the best is yet to come in terms of technology evolution.
Oh, very well. An interesting perspective on the future, and certainly a really poignant points raised that each of us need to be aware of, given the evolution of those topics. I wanted to also ask you, as someone who I know constantly fills your cup intellectually, what have you recently read, watched, and or listened to that you would recommend to others, Chandra?
As you know, Peter, I like to read. So I'm reading a book right now called Conscious Business, How to Build Value Through Values. It's by Fred Kaufman. And one of the concepts he describes in the book is that of taking unconditional responsibility rather than the blame game you see in a lot of companies. Basically, he says that you could choose to be either a player or a victim in any situation, whether you're the real victim or not, and demonstrates the positive win-win outcomes that you could drive from taking a player's role in any situation. Not to get too philosophical on you, it reminds you of, Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning, how you have the freedom to choose your own attitude. But in a corporate setting, I think taking that leadership teams that take that unconditional responsibility and permeate that culture is I think, quite interesting and fascinating. And then, as you probably have heard me say before, I'm a huge believer in Patrick Lencioni's books on employee engagement and team dynamics. The other thing I've just started reading is another one of Jim Collins' books. It's not a new book, but it's Great by Choice, written by Jim Collins and Martin Hanson.
Great suggestions all. I really appreciate that, Chandra. And moreover, I appreciate the thoughtful conversation throughout our time together here. A remarkable career that you have had so far, with so much yet to come. And I really appreciate you offering reflections not only on your current post and what keeps you so excited now as a chief executive officer, but also the career journey that has led to the position that you've reached. Congratulations on your many accomplishments so far, and I certainly look forward, as a friend of yours, that you of mine, to remaining abreast of continued progress ahead. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Peter, and congrats on your success. And who knows, maybe 5 years from now, we'll do another podcast together.
I will look forward to that.
Thank you.